Welcome back. It's time to talk about Hamlet's second major soliloquy, the "Oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I" / "The play's the thing" soliloquy. Hi, I'm Carly Stevens. I'm a teacher and author, and this is English Nerd. I am an avid studier of Hamlet, as you have no doubt seen if you've been around the channel. I have an entire scene by scene, line by line, practically breakdown. So that will be attached at the end of this video, so you can check out the whole series if you like. But I thought I would isolate this soliloquy and just give you my thoughts on it, the meaning, the analysis, all of that. As always, if you are writing a paper or doing something of that nature where you really should be doing your own investigation, then sure, you can learn things from this, but make sure that you're not just taking my ideas. That, my friends, is plagiarism, which is cheating. So make sure you don't do that. However, I think everybody will learn something if you are interested in Hamlet, as I assume you are. Don't forget to pre-order the special edition of Laertes, Hamlet retelling, through Barnes & Noble. It comes out October 22nd. Okay, without further ado, here is that soliloquy. Here's the beginning of the soliloquy that we'll be looking at today. It's in Hamlet Act 2, Scene 2, which is a monstrously long scene, and this is the longest soliloquy as well. That's not to say that they're not good. They're some of the best scenes and speeches in the entire play. So here, just to give context, the players have arrived, the actors, to Elsinore, the palace, and they've just given a speech, and Hamlet dismisses them. So they leave, Rosencrantz, Guildenstern leave, Polonius leaves, and Hamlet, as he begins here, is finally alone, and he can voice his thoughts, at least to himself, as we'll see. So he says, "Now I am alone." Most people start the speech right there. Right there. "Oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I. Is it not monstrous that this player here," so this actor who's just given a speech about the fall of Troy and the destruction of the Trojan nobles, "that this player here, but in a fiction, in a dream of passion, could force his soul so to his own conceit, that from her working all his visage wand," etc. So let's make sure that everything's clear before we go any further. "Oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I." First thing Hamlet does is connect everything that's happened back to himself. Now, many of us have this tendency to one degree or another, but Hamlet very clearly connects everyone and everything back to himself in a very regular way throughout the entire play. In fact, it becomes clearer and clearer that he has a hard time seeing things from another person's point of view, because it usually is some kind of reflection on him and his experience. So he says, "What a rogue and peasant slave am I. I have been doing things all wrong." He's basically berating himself because he compares himself to this player. "Is it not monstrous that this player here, but in a fiction, in a dream of passion, could force his soul to do all these things?" So the player, in the earlier part of the scene, got all teary-eyed at the thought of Hecuba weeping over her slain husband, and Hamlet is realizing he has much more actual cause in real life to be upset, to cry, to take action, than the player has to cry or take action or anything like that. And yet the player has all of this emotion, and Hamlet is all bottled up. So he's comparing himself very negatively to this player. "In a dream of passion could force his soul so to his own conceit." Conceit here means the idea that the player is referring to. It's not conceit as in vanity. "That from her working all his visage wand." So he went pale, his face went pale, tears in his eyes, distraction in his aspect. Distraction in the context of Hamlet almost always means madness, this verging on crazy, which is a theme throughout the entire story. Is Hamlet going mad, or what does it mean to go mad? So in his expression, there was also this hint of madness, a broken voice, and his whole function suiting with forms to his conceit. So everything was matching exactly what he was saying about Hecuba and her grief. But it was all for nothing, Hamlet goes on. For Hecuba. What's Hecuba to him? Or he to Hecuba, that he should weep for her? Hecuba is the queen of Troy, Priam's wife, and she's not there. There's some debate about whether she existed at all, and so Hamlet says, not only does this player not have real reason compared to me to be sad or things like that, but he's doing all this for Hecuba. She's nothing. She's just this story, which is interesting because Hamlet in Shakespeare's version is just a story as well. But I hate saying just a story because characters live on. Hecuba and Hamlet live on. But why should he weep for her? What would he do? He meaning the player again. What would he do had he the motive and the cue for passion that I have? There it is. He's making that clear connection between the player and himself. He's declaring them foil characters, ones who are intentionally meant to contrast with one another to highlight some characteristic. So in the case of this here, Hamlet is feeling that he is not showing the passion, the emotion, the planning that he should up to this point, because he sees himself in comparison to this player. He would drown the stage with tears and cleave the general ear with horrid speech, make mad the guilty and appall the free, confound the ignorant and amaze indeed the very faculties of eyes and ears. That was quite a bit, but I wanted to get through the entire sentence so we could hear the whole sense of it together, even though it is chunky. So if the player had his father murdered by his uncle, who then married his mother, took the throne, it's a whole thing, of course. If that were his story, if that were his scenario, then he would drown the stage, he would make mad the guilty, and even appall those whose consciences were completely free of any guilt. He would amaze everyone and just assault all of their senses with the grief and the horror and the passion of what was going on. Yet I, and then there's just nothing. There's nothing there. So a lovely example of the form mirroring the content and what he was thinking. Like, yet I, bunch of nothing. By comparison, I should have these feelings, and yet, what have I been doing? Yet I, a dull and muddy-meddled rascal, peak like John a Dreams, unpregnant of my cause, and can say nothing. This idea of not being able to say anything is a major one in Hamlet. He says something very similar in his first soliloquy, Break my heart, but I must hold my tongue. And he says something like that here. He calls himself names yet again. He did it at the very beginning and he's doing it again here. He says, I am a rascal who's just moping around. It's as though I don't even care about my cause. It's, what have I been doing with my life? For him, he feels like this is a reality check. He says, okay, yeah, I'm acting like this person who can say nothing, this dreamer who's just lollygagging through life. No, not even for a king, upon whose property and most dear life a damned defeat was made. Am I a coward? This is a central question to this entire speech, to this rant that he goes on here at the end of Act 2, Scene 2. He's reminding himself his cause is to avenge his beloved father that he looked up to an enormous amount. Is it because I'm a coward? Many actors pause dramatically at this question. David Tennant walks right up to the camera and looks into the soul of the viewer. But this is incredibly important. Am I a coward? And if he is, what can he do about it? How can he change and take this inspiration in a positive direction? But before he does that, he berates himself some more. He says, "Who calls me villain, breaks my pate across, plucks up my beard and blows it in my face, tweaks me by the nose, gives me the lie in the throat, as deepest to the lungs, who does me this?" So it's almost like he's beating himself up. He says, okay, who's doing all these things to me? It's like when you get really hyped up for some kind of sporting event or something like that. You're acting like people are coming at you at all sides. Like, who's coming at me? Who does me this? Ha! Swoons. So swoons is a mild oath from Shakespeare's time. It means God's wounds. I should take it, he says. I should take all of this. If this were actually physically happening to me right now, I should just accept it because, I deserve to be abused in this way for my lack of action on behalf of my father. This is what he's saying. So, swoons, I should take it, for it cannot be but I am pigeon-livered and lack gall to make oppression bitter. So I must be a coward. What other explanation could there be? I'm pigeon-livered or lack gall to make oppression bitter. So he wants to take that revenge. He wants to make it bitter, but he hasn't. If this were not the case, or else, ere this, before this, I should have fatted all the region kites with this slave's offal. The language here is a little archaic, but what he's saying is, if I were not a coward, before this, I would have already fattened all of the kites, the birds. They're I don't know exactly what kind of bird, but presumably birds that eat carrion and that kind of thing. In the region, I would have fed them all with this slave's offal, with the entrails of my evil uncle. So that's what he means there. And then he refers to him. He says, bloody body villain, remorseless, treacherous, lecherous, kindless villain. So now he's shouting not at himself. He was berating himself before, but now he is turning his ire, his attention to Claudius, King Claudius, who is the perpetrator of all of this pain that he's going through, the one that he wants to avenge himself on. So he talks about how he's a murderer, how he's treacherous, how he's lecherous. He always brings things back to Claudius's relationship to his mother Gertrude as well, so that's thrown in there. But then there's a turn. There are a few turns in this. Here's another turn. Why? He says, what an ass am I. This is most brave, that I, the son of a dear father murdered, prompted to my revenge by heaven and hell, must like a whore unpack my heart with words. All right, let's talk about this for a moment. He starts using some choice language, so it is what it is. I'm not going to apologize for it exactly, but it's not language I typically use on the channel. So he's yelling at Claudius, but then he thinks this is stupid. This is brave, he says, that I, who have all this cause for revenge, am just unpacking my heart with words. I'm just shouting these empty words, these empty threats. It needs to be more than words. So I'm unpacking my heart with words and fall a-cursing like a very drab Ascolian. So we get lots of synonyms for horror there. So I'm not going to unpack that any further, but that's basically what that means. So like somebody who has very little agency, all I'm doing is using my words instead of my actions to do something about this, is what he means. Fie upon it. So curse it, foe. About my brain. So think. So here is another turn. I have heard that guilty people sitting at a play, have by the very cunning of the scene been struck so to the soul that presently they have proclaimed their malefactions. Malefactions are evil deeds. You can see the root words there. So he's heard that people who are guilty, if they are struck by the lifelikeness of the scenes being acted out in front of them, maybe it's a similar scene to the crime that they committed, they have proclaimed their evil doings right there in the midst of the theater. I don't know how often this kind of thing, or if this kind of thing has happened. I would be surprised if it had never happened, but Hamlet at least has heard of these things. He says, "For murder, though it have no tongue, will speak with most miraculous organ." So murder is something that cannot be hidden. Eventually it's going to speak out. And so he's hoping that maybe what he hears up here is true, is a way to get a confession from Claudius. "I'll have these players," he says, "these actors, play something like the murder of my father before mine uncle." So he's going to choose a play that is either already about a very similar crime, or he already talked to the playwright before this about adding a few lines here and there. So that could have something to do with it as well. But however it happens, he wants the players to essentially reenact the murder of his father, and he's going to invite his uncle to watch. "I'll observe his looks, I'll tempt him to the quick. If he but blench, I know my course." So if he blenches, so if he goes pale, if he flinches, if there's the smallest change in his face, then I'll know he's recognizing his own guilt there. Another turn, even though it's in the middle of a line. "The spirit that I have seen may be the devil." So some context is necessary here. I assume that you are in the process of reading Hamlet, or you have read Hamlet if you're watching this. But "the spirit that I have seen," this is the ghost that Hamlet sees in Act 1, Scene 5, the ghost of his father who told him all about his own murder and told Hamlet to avenge him and all of that. So "the spirit that I have seen may be the devil, and the devil hath power to assume a pleasing shape. Yea, and perhaps out of my weakness and my melancholy, as he is very potent with such spirits, abuses me to damn me." This is an interesting turn because it's the first time we hear the doubt that Hamlet has about the ghost that he saw. Is it really his father? Or is it this demon that's trying to fool Hamlet into doing something that is considered one of the worst possible sins, the murder of a family member? And not only that, but the king, who is divinely appointed according to the ideas of the time. So he says, I need to have additional evidence that he's guilty before I take action, to make sure that this is not just some trick of the devil playing on my weakness and my melancholy, my depression and different things that have been going on in his life. He says, "I'll have grounds more relative than this." So more objective, essentially, more conclusive. "The play's the thing, wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king." It's a great final sentence, not least because it's the only part of this that rhymes. This is pretty common in Shakespeare. A lot of these speeches are in blank verse, so you do have some meter going on. "Before mine uncle, I'll observe his looks," but no rhyme until you get, sometimes when you get to the end of the scene, the most important character in that scene, or the noblest character in that scene, will give just a couplet, like a punctuation mark at the end. Not only is that kind of a cool convention, but also this is very memorable. The play is the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king. And so we know Hamlet has a plan from here on out. He felt called out, he did some soul searching, and finally at the end here he has a workable plan to move forward in his his plan of revenge. It's a strange way to move forward, but at least we have some insight into his mind and how he arrived at this idea. I hope that was enlightening for you. I always love learning new things about Hamlet, so if there was anything I overlooked or a thought that you have about this particular speech, please let me know down below. I am always excited to expand my knowledge of Shakespeare's Hamlet. So make sure to like this video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe and check out Laertes, a Hamlet retelling, which is available everywhere. Special edition coming out this October. All right, until next time, bye.